What is going on, everybody? What is going on?
Hey, what's up, guys?
It's been a long. It's hot today, isn't it? Oh my goodness, it's hot today too. But nevertheless, we're back in the all white, repping the.
Yes,
Ooh,
we are right here.
It's kind of confusing, right?
Yeah.
But repping the Focus on Youth. Welcome back, everybody. We do appreciate you guys coming, tuning into us. We're back with the Focus, and we have a great one for you guys today. Last week, if you guys missed it, it's available on our YouTube and as well as Spotify and Google Podcasts. Sorry about that. But last week we did talk about financial literacy. We had some great panelists from the board and as well from people that do entrepreneurship, financial literacy teaching outside. And we spoke about just a bit about the basics of investing, the pros and cons to it, and how to get started really. And it was a great discussion. We hope you guys loved that one because I sure found that informative. I know Rebecca was out here taking down her. She had her pen and her paper ready. But we got a good one for you today. Before we get into it, we're just gonna do our land acknowledgement and get started.
Thank you, Zach. So, it's important to acknowledge Canada's history of enslavement, racial segregation, and marginalization as it has had a devastating impact on people of African descent. The existence of systemic anti-Black racism and inequality in education, housing, employment, health, criminal justice, politics, and other areas can be directly traced to the complex legacies of the dehumanizing enslavement of African people in Canada. Canada has neither recognized nor educated the public adequately about the historical facts related to slavery and the anti-Black racism it has produced. Despite this, Black Canadians have made outstanding contributions to Canada in every field, which is all the more remarkable given the legacy of slavery. It is necessary to recognize the history of Black Canadians in order to build a more just society free from discrimination. Thank you.
Thank you, Rebecca. So with that, we have a pretty full episode discussion today.
Yes.
We're talking about racism today.
What now?
Yeah, and the next steps that we can take. This discussion is one that's going to be very, very challenging in some sorts. So if you guys have anything to say, let us know in the comments. Share your opinions, your thoughts, your feelings. If you guys are just listening with us, let us know what you guys think afterwards or your thoughts. You can find us on Instagram. We'll talk about that later. But nevertheless, Rebecca, you ready?
I'm ready.
Ready? Let's get into our discussion.
Yes, so I'm going to introduce our first guest, which is a really good friend that I met this year within the Equity Subcommittee. His name is Mr. Logan. Hey, Logan. How are you?
Hey, Logan.
Hi, I'm Logan Liu. You may be wondering, why is a white guy here? Don't worry. I'm not going to be anything problematic. I am a student at St. Michael's Choir School. I was also a former ambassador for French for the Future, and I currently sit on an executive board of a New Democratic Party electoral district association here in the city of Toronto. So.
Okay,
Damn.
sir.
Okay, Mr. Logan.
What we usually do with all our guests, to help break the ice, let us know a fun fact about yourself.
So a fun fact about myself is, I was selected to be one of the delegates for the convention of the New Democratic Party this year in, I believe, April. I got to vote on national policy that will be brought forward next election, and I'm really proud of what happened at that convention.
You're really involved in politics, and that takes a lot. I know personally, and we don't even have to get into that, but politics is tough. So
it can be at times, definitely.
A lot. Thank you, Logan, for being with us, and stay put because we're gonna get into our next guest, friend of mine, friend of the show as well, and he works now with MLSE Launchpad, Mr. Remay.
Hey
everyone. Thanks, Zach. I appreciate that. My name's Remay. I'm a third-year student at York studying political science and English. I also work at MLSC Launchpad. So we're just a space that offers sport programming through building life skills and things like that. We're at Dundas and Jarvis. So if you're ever interested, slide by when we're open. A fun fact about me. Okay, I have 2 dogs. I have 2 dogs, both 2 pitties. And second, maybe I'll give you guys a second one. I'm weirdly addicted to peanut butter. I love peanut butter. I love peanut butter so much.
Yeah,
So you can put it on basically anything.
You know what I'm trying to say? But yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
thank you. All right, up next, another really good friend. She's a co-exec, a co-director, Miss Shania.
Hey. So my name is Shania. I go to Senator O'Connor, incoming UBC student. And I am the director of social justice on the CSLIP board. And I guess a fun fact about me, I used to swim for the Canadian team. And yeah.
Wow.
Alrighty.
Wow.
Yeah.
She's just gonna
She
drop
was
Canadian team. She's just gonna drop Canadian team like that's not a big deal. Wow. That's okay though. That's okay though. OCS stand up. That's okay.
Yeah.
We're gonna get into our last guest. And she's a coordinator here at Focus on Youth, and maybe she'll tell us a bit about what she does within Focus on Youth. Miss Lauren.
Hey.
Hey, Lauren.
Hey guys, I'm Lauren. I am going into my 3rd year at Ryerson University studying sociology, and I am also a art coordinator at Focus on Youth. So, yeah.
Thank you, Lauren. Thank you.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Now that we have all of our panelists up here, we can get into the conversation that we want to have. And I know, when me and Zach were planning this conversation, one of the things we were worried about if this was just going to be another one of those redundant conversations about racism. We were like, we just don't want to call a whole bunch of people, to come on the panel, just to have a conversation that people have been having all year, like we need to talk about going beyond and stuff. But before we get into that, I feel like there's a question that, people are always afraid to ask. And this comes with people of color, and then this comes with Black people. But, we usually talk about racism towards the white man, towards, white people. But real quick, because, even when me and Zach were talking about it, we were kind of debating over it too. But just to clear the air, just to ask, do you guys think that on our behalf, that racism can be a thing? Do you guys think that we could be racist as people of color? So just curious about, your guys' opinions on that, because in my opinion, I say no. I
can talk first. I also say no. I think there's a big difference between being prejudiced, against a race, and actually being racist against a race. Like when I think of the word racism, I think of it being systematic, right? And a dominant race is kind of using their power to oppress another person or to oppress another race. And personally, for me, I don't think Black people or the Black community has that power to oppress another race. But I 100% agree that we are prejudiced. I 100% agree. Yeah.
I agree.
Lauren, even to add to your point, I stand on that hill with you and Rebecca. I don't think that Black people can be racist simply because racism is something that it's an idea that it stands on the legs of oppressing a minority or or a group of people that's marginalized. And so in a lot of ways, yes, we can be we have our prejudice beliefs. We can be discriminatory. We can be very problematic. However, to be racist, I fully but wholeheartedly believe that isn't something that is possible simply because in the context of race, we are the marginalized group. Therefore, we cannot be we can't be racist in just in its own definition. The logic has to align and it doesn't.
Yeah, because the thing is though, but some people say that prejudice is racism though. Like being prejudiced is racism. And so I see Shani just went like, I don't think so, but
Yeah, I wouldn't say so. Just because, like, prejudice is like, yeah, like you have a certain assumption or kind of like a stereotype of a race, which I can see commonly with my parents just because, like, they're immigrants. And so, like, you know, sometimes it's like it's confusing. And that's not to go to say, like, I'm not going to go and like correct them the next second. But, like, I just think that when it comes to racism, it's like you're more so acting on that prejudice than you are just like letting it slide. So that's why I just don't think that it's the same, because racism is like you're really acting on it. You're really going to say it to someone's face, or like you're really going to just go out and about and kind of talk to your friends and be like that. So that's why I don't think so.
and I like sorry, Rime.
Go ahead, Rebecca. Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say I just liked how she brought up the point about parents, because now when we're talking about parents, especially immigrant parents, they can say a lot of problematic things with no shame, and it's like problematic, you know. And but then that's when I kind of realized we're like they're probably not being racist to the person. This is just them being prejudiced. This is just them acting upon a stereotype that they have in their head. So yeah, I think that was a good way to differentiate it.
But one thing that I would say though is racism isn't necessarily like an external act, or it's not really like I mean, it is measured. I mean, if somebody calls you a certain word or something, like it can be measured or it can be observed. However, like racism is something that's structural, something that is actually intangible in a lot of ways, and that's the more powerful. That's the real, I guess. Not to say that being called something or being said, like something being said about you and your race being the focal point of it isn't racist, because it is, but racism is something that is actually intangible. It's almost like a reaction to an idea of white supremacy, for example, or which is by and part anti-blackness, you know. So even then I would say like prejudice, first off, everybody's prejudice has their own prejudice. I think that's the natural part of being a human with a critical mind. I think naturally you will have your own prejudice from picking up on patterns and things like that. However, again, racist is, I think that's a reach still. If anyone calls a black person racist, I think that's a real reach.
Yeah. And then, you know, since we're just like on the topic of comments, right? So like, let's say now when a person of color makes a joke about a white person, do you guys think we should be called out on that? We can get Logan's point.
Logan, you're shaking your head, man.
When you hear a person of color maybe say that comment about white people, do you think like?
Listen, are they oppressed? The answer is no. White people are not oppressed. It's like saying, it's like, you know what I'm gonna compare it to? I'm gonna compare it to, you know, it's kind of like mouthing off at, or like trying to sue McDonald's. It's like they can sue back and they're not gonna lose any money. They're not gonna care. They're not gonna do anything. It's just literally, they're just like, oh, cute, you want to sue us? Here's our lawyer. They're already hired by us full time. We're not losing anything.
Wow.
Like,
Yeah.
That's the kind of attitude that I take towards that kind of stuff. Of course, if it's like, you know, people can get hurt by comments, but everyone can get hurt by comments. It doesn't make it of that seriousness.
Yeah.
It's honestly, that's probably the best way that I can say it. It's like suing a multinational company over their cereal box, like they do in the US. And they're like, that's cute, you can sue us. It's not going to change. We're still rich, you know?
So can we say that reverse racism doesn't exist then? Because that's also another conversation.
Reverse racism, if we talk about it in a North American context, no, and I'd gather to say in the whole world, probably not. But then, you know, are there instances where there is reverse prejudice? For instance, if we look at like political parties, for instance, like the I don't remember what they're called. They're called the IFF, I think, in South Africa. Something freedom fighters, and they definitely have their prejudices against the Afrikaner population, which is understandable from a generational trauma standpoint. But I don't think reverse racism exists necessarily. Reverse prejudice, but everyone can have reverse prejudice.
Yeah.
Like,
Because
no.
I know this is like a real conversation that I have with like my friends sometimes, and like I do, I do have a few white friends, right? And I do have a few friends who aren't black. And then when you accidentally, and I'm not even gonna sit and act like I'm innocent. I crack the jokes, I make the jokes, and then instantly I'm like, wait, am I even allowed to say that? Should I say that? Are they gonna think something of that? They're gonna think I'm negative, and then you kind of come off negative and pessimistic. But yeah, so. I mean, ultimately, we got to be nice to each other. But yeah, I think that was that's like a
just
comment.
follow the golden rule. Except if someone's discriminating against you, then go after them with a human rights complaint or something. Do what you want.
We talked about the. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Lauren.
I don't believe reverse racism exists, but I do believe that there is discrimination kind of within the Black community itself. With colorist jokes and all that sort of stuff.
I agree.
Right. I know we kind of touched on this in terms of our social media episode a few weeks ago, but this is kind of a twofold question. One, everything that's happened this past year, with all the posting, the reposting on people's Instagrams, Twitters, and whatnot, with all the Black Lives Matter movements that was going on. Some people got like weird backlash for not posting, like for being that certain skin color or not posting, or feeling that pressure and like not even educating themselves. We talked about education before posting, but not educating themselves before posting. So one, like when people say, I guess maybe Lauren, maybe you could speak on this as well. Like some people say like, oh, like you're not Black enough, or you're not Black if you don't support your own kind, if you don't sorry, I almost fell. If you don't repost your own kind, it's very concerning to me, that process, that mental process. But I want to hear maybe another person's perspective on this, and maybe Logan, you can share as well too. Sorry, go ahead, Lauren.
Well, when that whole Black Lives Matter movement was going on in the beginning of 2020, I think Black people already go through so much. You know what I'm saying? I think most of us have been through traumatizing experiences in our life. So when that happened and the whole George Floyd murder happened, for me personally, it kind of re-traumatized me in a way. Just seeing an innocent Black man getting killed on your timeline, like, that's not normal. You know what I'm saying? Just videos of an innocent man getting murdered. So it really hurt my mental health. I had to take time off of social media. You know what I'm saying? I didn't want to be on social media. So just the fact that people kind of associate posting a pic on your story with supporting a cause, it's kind of confusing to me, because people can be doing so many other things. People can be signing petitions. People can be protesting outside. People can be donating to certain causes. Just posting a picture or posting something on your story doesn't mean, or not posting something doesn't mean that you're not supporting a cause.
But to just pick up on what you said though, Lauren, right? Because then on the other side of that, right, there was a lot of pressure on, like, for example, maybe for some people, all they could do was post. It was a pandemic. It was lockdown. A lot of people couldn't go and protest. I know I wanted to go and protest, and my mom was like, hell no. Like, you're not going outside with all those people in the middle of the city, and you're not going out there, right? And just like you sign all those petitions, but then sometimes you're like, well, what does the petitions do? And it's like, and then this
I can answer that from a political perspective later, because those petitions are not what you think they are, and they don't work.
Exactly. And so now when it comes to posting, right, you got to really check your intentions. Are you posting it so that your friends know that you're aware of it, or are you posting because you found something interesting and you actually want to share it? Is your platform now really your platform, or is it controlled because you're influenced by everybody else so that you go ahead and post? And the reason why I think this is really problematic, because as soon as someone saw, oh wait, you were quiet, especially during those times, you were quiet for 2 days on Instagram, and I don't even mean to say the slur, but it's like, you coon. Like, how are you not posting about your people? No, but straight up, that's what it is. How are you not posting about your people every 2 days? Now, when it comes to, for example, all those videos of people, going through police brutality, like the different things that they go through within prison and jail, right? Now, when they're out, like now, let's say I don't want to repost that because that's traumatizing, because I know the kind of people that follow me, because I know that that's just going to desensitize yourself, because I don't want to post graphic things. On the other side of that, there was like, some intense hate on the other end of it. So petitions, I hate to say, but I really don't think people realize they're not as, like, we've come to a point where that has become extremely
It
performative.
depends which petitions, but yeah, so from a political perspective, as someone in the political arena, if it says change.org, it's not going to change anything. And here's why. Because when it says this is being sent to Justin Trudeau, it's being sent in an email, one. And a better way to actually engage is actually, number one, to call. The number one thing when Doug Ford made that comment against that Indigenous MPP, the one tactic that was used and it worked was, instead of writing that change.org petition and then sending one email with 15,000 signatures to Doug Ford's office, instead, Doug Ford's office got 8,000 calls. And what does that tell them? A whole of a lot more than one email when the petition's closed.
Mm-hmm.
And another one of those things is the petitions on change.org have to be closed before they're sent. And so a lot of these petitions with these huge amounts of signatures are still not closed, and they've never been sent.
Wow.
So what happens there is, number one, if you're signing a petition, try and get it on the House of Commons page, because that can actually be sponsored by an MP and actually go to the national level. But also, I do just want to caution people generally with this whole kind of new kind of activism online, because we saw that people didn't actually know what they were posting, number one, which is harmful for many reasons. And number two, people actually didn't care, and especially the white people who were harassing either other white people or even other minorities for not posting, BLM. Maybe they just, you know what? Maybe they work in a public service job and they can't post that because they're risking their job.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, people don't consider other people when they do this stuff. And although it is great to raise awareness, again, there was, for instance, and this might be a little bit controversial, right? But there was this post that was going around with the Israel-Palestine conflict that was saying, let's not call it a conflict or something in that. And all of the Jewish community and a lot of the Palestinian community started saying, this post is not it, because it had a lot of stuff wrong with it. I'm not going to get into it. But people were reposting and reposting and reposting. And when you went to actually look at the organizations in those areas in Israel and Palestine who are on the ground, they have pictures of it and they're like, please don't post this, because it's not
Yeah.
what's actually going on the ground.
And I think that's what happens. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah. And that's what happens with this kind of, just repost. How about instead of reposting, we actually just post our own stuff, our own, like, instead of just posting the black square, how about post the black square, but then put in gray in the background your actual feelings on it, so people know that you know what's going on. People know that you care enough that you're not just being like, okay, I'm a white person, let's post this black square and let's go to sleep because we've done what we can. No, you have not. You have not gotten involved in politics. You have not emailed your MP, MPP, city councilor saying, this is what needs to go on. It's that kind of stuff that when I see people who have the kind of 20 Instagram posts and then nothing else, they have like 20 Instagram posts about the thing for a week and then you never hear about it again. It's like, let's follow up on these things. Let's actually keep them in mind. It's so much, and there's so many more ways that you can get involved.
And I think with the pressure that was on social media, then that just led people to not even really read what they were posting and just reposting whatever.
And it dilutes the actual movement.
Yeah.
Because the movement is reduced to a trend, and then it goes away, because trends and fads go away. And I can compare this even to the music industry right now, and people getting mad when their music trends on TikTok. Because what happens, I'll use this analogy, when your music trends on TikTok, it trends for 2 weeks, and then it goes off the Billboard 200 like that. No one's listening anymore. The thing that we have to do is we have to keep the momentum going, even if it's not as visible and not everyone is posting it. The people who are involved will continue to post it.
Yeah.
The people who are involved will also work behind the scenes, because the real work happens, unfortunately, behind closed doors.
And I think another thing we can add to this, because I know another topic that we wanted to discuss is about how our skin tone is not necessarily political. And even having this conversation with some people are like, well, our skin tone is political. There's a lot of history with it. Like, how can you say it's not political? But then in my opinion, I don't think it's political. I think I should be allowed to just be Black and just be that. And with that, right, like now, let's say when we, attach it to social media, and throughout that year, I know that I felt this pressure. I have a few friends who felt this pressure, but all of a sudden we had to become advocates and activists overnight. And I don't think what a lot of people realize is I probably have the same knowledge that Shania has, that Lauren has, or, whatever, like anybody like around my age, I probably have the same knowledge as them. And it's not any better just because I'm Black, because really at the end of the day, I grew up in the same education system as you did, right? And so I know we have our experience to go on that. But when it comes to now being like the token Black kid to now go speak at this conference, go speak at this event, go do this, you have to speak up. And then comes times where I didn't feel comfortable. I didn't want to go on the news and speak. I didn't want to go and do this. And all of a sudden that was an issue. And all of a sudden, comes that.
Go ahead, Remake.
One thing it's funny because this is something that, or what you just shared, Rebecca, is something that I've been thinking about a lot, but I wanted to speak on what Lauren said. I agree. Facts, Lauren. I think that whole George Floyd thing was very, very traumatizing, even for myself personally. Like, I was an emotional wreck for like 3 or 4 days. I was crying. I was upset. I was calling my therapist. I was like, yo, I need help. I was shaking it, because it was a lot. And like, it turns out that everything just became almost like trauma porn, where it's just everywhere, all over your timeline, and you're just kind of like, whoa, I don't want to see this. I don't want to see this, but you kind of have to. But so I agree, Lauren. But back to your point, Rebecca, I've been like in my own like personal limbo with that idea, because the thing is, where I stand is like, you do know a lot, like you do know it quite a bit because you live that experience, So it's like this weird thing of like, all of us are, or whoever identifies with this issue is actually inherently an expert at this issue, whether they know the facts of the matter, whether they know X% of people who have died or how many police officers were convicted. Like, that's almost besides the point to some extent, because you inherently know what's happening because you experience it, right? So it's almost like this weird thing. But then again, I'm not for tokenism at all. Like, that
was just kind of the result of it.
Yeah, facts. And like, for quite a bit of my life, I was in high school, like the token Black youth, like Zach went to high school, and even Shani went to high school with me too. Like, I wasn't wearing no braids or talking how I'm talking. Like, I was very modeled, my T's crossed, I's dotted. And I realized coming out of high school that wasn't even who I was, So I'm not for tokenism either. However, like, there's this weird, like, I personally am in this weird limbo with the idea of like sharing because I know, but also making sure that I'm not a token same way. So I don't know, it's weird, but then again,
I think it's kind of hard too, because even just going back a bit, back to our last point, when I first started university and I told people like I was going to Wilfrid Laurier, a lot of friends, I won't say the race, but a lot of friends were like, "You're going to Laurier?" I'm like, "Yeah." They're like, like, kind of like, "How'd you get in?" Like, like, interesting. right? And I told them my program too. They're like, how'd you get in? And then on the flip side, I told my other friends, I think we know other friends I'm talking about, and then they'd be like, oh, they're gonna turn you white out there. They're gonna turn you white out. They're gonna get so whitewashed. I'm like, this doesn't change. Like this does not change. Like whitewash to me, like I don't know. Like people in the comments were talking about just because you excel at school, that doesn't make you whitewashed, right? Just because you like a certain genre of music, that doesn't make you necessarily whitewashed. Yeah, like we're grown up to listen to hip hop, to listen to our culture, but there's no like it's kind of hard because there's no real like token like black person, right? Like everyone's different in their own respects. When myself and Rebecca, when we started this webinar a couple weeks back or a couple months back, actually, some people came up to me after our first episode, and they're like, "Oh, like you're making us black people look so good. You're making us black people look so." And I'm just like, in my head, like obviously, like it's nice to hear that. Like it's nice to hear that your work is being appreciated, but at the same time, you're like, but how are we looked otherwise? Like how are we looked at otherwise if we're not doing this? Like how, like what does looking good mean? Like what does the other side look like? Right? You know what I mean? Like there's no token, I guess, black person. There's no like, yeah, we all have our different, we can get into maybe like role models and stuff like that, but
and that's a dangerous thing. I think
it's very hard. It's very dangerous. Like,
and that can prevent us from opportunities too.
exactly.
I have a story about that actually.
Go ahead.
Sorry, Rebecca. I don't even mean to cut you off, but
don't worry.
So in high school, I got into Western and Queens. I'm at York, so and like a big reason was I was like, if I go over there, like, oof, am I gonna have a community? How am I gonna feel when I come back to the ends? Because I live in the ends. What's gonna happen when I come back to the ends? Am I gonna lose touch with that? This is this. How am I gonna talk to my younger bro, my older bro? This is this. If like I'm disconnected from it. But by a part, it drove me away from a great opportunity, and that's an opportunity that I regret, and that's something that I share with my younger brother now, who's in grade 12. And I'm just like, oh, go as far as you want to go into whatever remote town you want to go to whatever city you want to go, just go and do it. Because same ways, like that's kind of how you grow and that's kind of how you learn. And like, it's not really fair that we're kind of burdened with this decision to kind of choose the integrity of our blackness or an opportunity, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And
Rima,
I
you
think-
touched on it a bit. Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. I feel like I'm the literal total opposite. Like I grew up with all white kids. When my dance studio consists of all white kids, my high school consists of all white kids, right? So I was always told I've been whitewashed, or, oh, like you aren't the same as other black people because I had nice clothes or I lived in a certain area. And apparently like that didn't fit their criteria of being a black person. So I kind of made it, I go to Ryerson now, right, which is really diverse. I kind of made it a point, like I wanted to go to a diverse university because I never had that really growing up. I never really experienced having a lot of racialized kids in my schools or just in my after school programs.
Yeah. Rima, you kind of touched on it too. And I kind of wanted to get like, I guess everyone's thoughts on this as well. Like, even going back to the token, sorry, I keep mentioning it, but it's just, it's on my mind. Even when you go out, you do good things. I haven't seen this personally. I more so see this in like movies and stuff. But even when you come back to the ends, like Rima mentioned, like people out here saying, "Oh, like you forgot about us." Like you know what I mean? Like you switched up on us. You changed on us. But like I changed up on you. Like how? Like the way I act, the way I carry myself now. Like I changed up because I want to get like better for myself. So it's kind of hard because on one end you're facing two battles sometimes. You're facing within your own community at times, and you're facing the real like corporate world where those opportunities aren't presented as equal as you. But then on the other end, people think, oh, yo, you made it, you switched up on us, you changed on us, all this stuff.
Mhm.
It's very hard, right? It's very hard, but I guess I don't know. Like I guess my question is, how can one like maybe like combat that, or how can like what can people do to like deal with that, Rime?
That's I mean, yeah, that's something that I'm trying to figure out myself, to be quite honest with you. But like, you kind of have to, like, it's hard because so long I think, okay, blackness is also an idea, so it can be expressed however, you know. So with that being said, like, I would say, yo, go do your thing. But where I struggle even within myself while I say that is, to some degree, I kind of get where that other person who's from your ends, from where you live, saying that sort of thing. Because like, when you do go off to these spaces, you naturally inherit some of those values and some of those ways of thought and things like that. So like, when you come back, odds are you will probably express those values and thoughts and ideas and things like that in your own communities. And there's like that weird, like, asymmetry kind of, or like this like misalignment kind of between your environment now and yourself. And to be honest, I'm kind of rambling, but what I'm trying to say is go do your thing. But same ways, like, it's tough because when you do go do your thing, you kind of also want to be able to make sure you know where you come from. And that's me. That could be me projecting, because that's something that I value, you know, is knowing where you come from, right? So I'll be honest, Zach, I don't know. I don't have the answer for that one, cuz.
Stuff. And I relate to Zach and Rime, and Shania knows, you know, just throwing her out there. Like, I got into Queens and Western, and I knew that I wanted to leave the city for university. I knew that I wanted to try something new and go away, and that meant probably going to Queens or Western. And as soon as I put in the group chat, mind you, this whole group chat is people of color. Everybody in there was like, "Are you crazy? Are you trying to get hate crime?" Even with Logan, like, even speaking with Logan, he was like, if you want to get hate crime, go there. You're gonna deal with this, and that." And it really, like, I mean, it's too late now. You can't change it, but
and here's the reason why I say that about certain spaces. These spaces are generational. Even certain colleges at UFT, like Trinity College, Victoria College, they are generational and very white. All of their money is white, and therefore all of their catering is to white, you know?
Yeah.
The money leads to where the money came from, kind of thing. Which is one of the reasons why when we were talking about university together, I said, how about Carleton? How about Ryerson? Even though that name should be changed, but that's another conversation. Ryerson, even, you know, I'm going to New College at UFT, which is like their multicultural college. It's very much their kind of more international. They have the Caribbean studies is housed there, all of that stuff. And
yeah,
it's
just, really,
and even for like, and you know, it's the funny part, white people also do it to other white people as well.
Interesting.
Like, if you've ever heard of the Orange Order in Northern Ireland, white people, the Orange Order basically is a group that was made in response to the Catholic response in Northern Ireland. So they do parades promoting Protestantism.
Mad.
So it's not only, it is a very white thing to do. And there's a difference between white people and white people. It is a very white thing to do, is to make these kind of, white people like to put ourselves in boxes. You're this. And really that's becoming a problem for people of color, I think, in communities like I've worked in, like the Francophone communities, where most of our Francophone immigrants now are coming from Africa. And they're struggling to find a space that's made for them. So it's those kind of things. White people like boxes, and we like generational stuff.
But as you mentioned, right, like the generational stuff, how there's money there, there's opportunities there. And then that's just kind of what determined my decision for where I want to go to for university. I was like, I might as well capitalize on the privilege that might be there. I might as well capitalize because I'm Black, so I already got like a few scholarships just for being Black. So that's gonna cover up.
Good.
Yeah, there was just like they were just throwing money away because they want diversity. If you want diversity, no problem, because I'm gonna capitalize off of the money that they have. That's it. And I realized that, and I don't want to say it's like not saying that it's a bad mentality, but I don't want to let a certain mentality affect the opportunities that are coming my way. Like at the end of the day, like I know I'm going there for my undergrad, right? But eventually, like I told myself, like, okay, no, but I'm gonna get my master's here. Like I have to come back here. I don't want to end up, starting a life there. But ultimately, like, as Zach told me in the past, I'll find my people there. Because this was a fear, especially around March and April. I don't know if he remembers, but he was like, you'll always find your people where you go. Like you'll find people who look where you go. So I was like, you know what? Like I'll be fine. And there's opportunities, especially for what I want to go into. Like I'm going to need to capitalize on opportunities if I want to be successful. So.
And opportunities are opening up everywhere, especially with the government. If you apply for FSWEP, which is the Federal Student Work Experience Program, like I did, they have huge safeguards in place. Stuff is incrementally getting better, I'd say, in the public sector more than it is in the private sector necessarily. But there needs to be a kind of, I think, a paradigm shift in how we look. First of all, Canada, I think it's travesty. Canada has no HBCUs. We have no.
HBCUs, yeah.
We have none, which is a problem.
Why is that? Why? And I was even like thinking about like joining a sorority or something, but that would just be so dumb as a Black woman. Like joining a sorority, I felt like, what's the point? Like there's no HBCUs, and
even in Canada, our Indigenous community too, like Indigenous peoples like are still suffering, and they don't have those.
Indigenous people have the occasional, I believe there are a couple in the prairies, but they're not even universities. They're like mini career colleges that are affiliated to a university. What we need to start, like, really, I think that Ryerson would be a great candidate for turning it into a minority-focused school. I think that they're on that path, but it needs to be accelerated.
But then I feel like that's silencing the problem, though. I feel like then that's like, okay. So then there's two ways that I think about that. Like, so now we're saying, oh, there's problems everywhere else. Let's just put Black people of color into one institution so that they'll be happy. And so all of these people get to keep up with their ways. I think it should be a standard that everybody should uphold, that the color of our skin is not something that is a determining factor. And I think doing stuff like that can be more problematic than beneficial.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with that. Like, I think that there's a lot in terms of like affirmative action, like obviously like in the US, like, and there's so much controversial topics around it because it's like so many people are like scared of like, oh, you know what, now I'm gonna have to sit and ponder. And I do this too every time, like anytime I get something in life, like opportunity wise, I'm always gonna sit there and ponder as to whether or not I got it for the reasons that I have the qualifications backing me, or is it because I'm just brown, this is gonna look like the poster child, I'm gonna look so good on this like poster for them, and that they're gonna be able to preach that they have diversity, but that's not necessarily the case. And like just circling back in terms of like when you guys were discussing universities, like how you like said you think you'd always find your people. In my sense, like for me personally, I've never really had that community or that sense of community South Asian wise. And it kind of sucks to say that just because like I've been in schools where that wasn't the case necessarily, programs that weren't the case either. So like for me, honestly, it wasn't even a determining factor as to whether or not like I'd be able to find people, because like I was always just like, oh, like I'll meet friends, that's fine. But like as like I grow older, I kind of just like I realize it, and it's like in the back of my head, like I really don't feel like I have that sense of community, and that part of me feels a little bit lost because like I just don't feel like I have an identity that's been developed with my own culture, just because like I've tried to push it aside for so long just because of people making fun of me, or like people just being like having those stereotypes. But now I just see people are like hopping on these trends and are acting like, oh my God, this culture is so amazing and it's so interesting to me. But like at the same time, it's very conflicting for me. I don't know. It's just my 2 cents there.
Yeah. Shania, I agree, but the one thing I would say is even if like for myself, I'll use myself. Even if I receive something because I am black, I would just argue, just take it, because at the end of the day, there's no, and I'll tell you why, because there's so many people, and it touches on what Logan said. There are so many white kids who all they have to do is get a phone, like their parent call the school, call the dean, and they're in wherever. We saw that whole scandal with in the States with the Ivy League schools, for example, right? There are like, and even the whole idea of generational wealth, where these people are hella rich because they just got here first, you know? But in reality, where was the like all the work was probably done by like their great grandparents. You see what I'm saying? And they're just sitting on the gold mine that was given to them. There was no merit involved. There was no quote unquote deservingness, you know, that exists. And I think that's something that is instilled in a lot of us because we're like first generation Canadians and things like that, where our parents had the idea of like, you know, work really hard, then you'll be deserving of X, Y, and Z. You see what I'm saying? However, the truth is, I don't think this world is built on quote unquote deservingness and this like virtue system that we're all acquainted with. You see what I'm saying? And even likewise, Rebecca, go to Queens, go to Western, do it, because the truth is that there are 1,000,001 opportunities that you can get over there from having a couple white friends. You never know who their parents are. And I don't need to say this out loud.
I literally make that joke all the time. Like, you never know. Your dad might hook me up with a job.
Facts though. Yeah. I had one homie who went to Crescent, and his friend's parent worked for like Gucci or something. And like he got hella plugged for, you see what I'm saying? So like you never know. And the truth is, again, this world isn't really based on deservingness. It's built around networks and having a strong network and having people who can help you get to where you need to be. So fam, run it up and enjoy it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say that the Western meritocracy doesn't really exist.
It's fake.
It's the connections though, Logan. Like, you don't know who you'll meet.
Well, that's the reason, like, in my personal experience, that's the reason why a lot of parents send their kids to the choir school, if we're being honest, because even more powerful than the school itself is the alumni association. It's like the thing, because, you know, you're fresh out of law school and you'll get 5 business cards by the time you'll walk out of that alumni association meeting, because you have those connections. So I'd say it's more a fact of, and that's why we see, you know, places like Harvard and all those places be so high acclaimed. It's not because their education is actually better, it's because the connections are.
And what that stands for, it's a status symbol. It stands for something bigger than the education.
Yeah, it's a brand.
Exactly.
It really is. Wow. So yeah, and I know like the date for choosing universities is just passed. Like, I think, was it yesterday? What day is it? Yeah, 2 days ago.
June
right?
1st. Yep.
I mean, ultimately, I think it really is an email if you want to make that decision. But I think when it comes to, and we're talking about university, but I think when it comes to anything in life, I say choose your best opportunity and go. Obviously, don't lose yourself in the sauce. Don't lose yourself in all of it. And don't forget about your family, like Rime mentioned, you know, or like your people from back home. But I think when an opportunity comes, like the goal is to always just reach another achievement and get to another one and get to another one and just continue growing. And if that means you got to do it through some connections, you know, go through some connections. Yeah. I definitely say, like, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid to do that. But then
and don't do something that will hurt you. Like I was about to do I was about to do an Ottawa program that did law straight off of the bat. And it was a law program that wasn't going to help me anywhere. It was for Francophone minorities. And I am not Francophone minority. I wasn't born Francophone. So again, it's like, and again, as a privileged Anglophone white person in this province, I was able to get admitted into a program that wasn't actually for me. Again, so it's that kind of privilege that it seems to always show up.
Yeah.
But then now let's say, oh, sorry, Zach.
No, go ahead, because I was gonna go somewhere else.
Yeah, no, same. I was gonna just kind of get into, so like now let's say now we're in these schools, right? And let's say now we're probably going to have to face, racism and discrimination and stuff, but we can speak up. And what I think is a problem when it comes to speaking up, though, and a problem that I even struggle with to this day, is just dealing with white fragility within these institutions while trying to speak up. Like I know in previous webinars, right, I've wanted to speak up about certain things, but then certain panels were here, so I didn't feel comfortable about it. So little things like that, like making sure that we don't fear, white fragility when speaking up. Like, and do we know what white fragility means? Do you think we should kind of does anybody want to go over what that maybe means and clear it up? Maybe you know what? Maybe we can get Logan to talk about
white fragility from a white perspective. A lot of white people seem to get very mad when the history of white people is brought up, or white privilege, because white Western society, especially Anglo-Saxon Western society, like the kind of English, kind of Anglo-American society, is obsessed with that idea again of meritocracy. Oh, it doesn't matter that you're this or this or this. So that when people bring it up, because the inherent white privilege is stopping them from getting the same thing as the average white person, the white people don't be like, oh, well, you know what? We should maybe work on that. No, their immediate reaction is, oh, well, that's not what I've been told. They're attacking me. It's like a personal attack. And I find that it's not most of the time malicious. There are certain times where it's used, like, oh, are you saying that because this? That's not what I'm talking about. It's really just a misunderstanding of not even a misunderstanding, of blissful ignorance of.
I think, and I like just how I think a lot of people of color would say it's just when white people are being really sensitive. Really, that's really what it is. Hypersensitivity.
It's sensitivity.
For what it is, hypersensitivity, and just because we're the ones who have to deal with the oppression, we're the one who has to deal with the discrimination, we're the ones who have to deal with it, right? So we're used to it. We're coming across it. It's not something new. It's not something that's shocking.
It's like LGBT. It's like LGBT people when you bring it up in the States to like a really conservative person, and they start saying, oh, well, the right to gay marriage is actually infringing on my rights to a heterosexual marriage. It makes no sense, right? It doesn't. It's like the right of oppressed people to actually voice their oppression and try and fight against it is somehow taking away their inherent right to oppress. It's really that simple.
Yeah.
It's being scared of not being able, I think, to be on top anymore. It's that kind of, oh, people are starting to know this. And that's when people, my favorite thing is whenever you hear a white person start saying critical race theory, you run, because it's going to be.
Lauren.
I also think that it's just they're uncomfortable. Like they're uncomfortable talking about that sort of stuff, and I feel like they need to get kind of comfortable with being uncomfortable, because I've been uncomfortable for my entire life. You know what I'm saying? Like people of color have been uncomfortable for their entire life. White people didn't have to walk in the room and be the only white person in that room and feel that sense of being uncomfortable for me every single day. So I think they need to talk about that stuff and be uncomfortable for a day talking about it. You know what I'm saying? Because we've been uncomfortable.
Yeah, and that was like the point I was trying to make earlier. Like I think the reason why there's this, and I will say I believe it's hypersensitivity. I think the reason why there is the sensitivity is just because you guys aren't like, white people aren't the ones who have to deal with it. White people aren't the ones who have to face or struggle, with it. So to them it's a shock, and to them now they feel offended. And I think that's something that stops a lot of people's of color's voices. It stops our voice because now we're afraid we're going to offend or hurt this and that. And that's why we kind of, we started off this webinar like, can Black people be racist? In our opinion, no, right? This like we can't offend. Like, yes, we have prejudices. Yes, we may offend, but we need to make sure that that fear of offending and stuff doesn't stop us from speaking our truth. Because I think that's, and I know for me, that's been a really big struggle in the past. Even just getting around within systems and stuff, right? Like, oh, I want to make sure I don't come off offending this person and stuff. But I think to move on, like, we have to kind of move on from being afraid of hurting someone's feelings, really.
Yeah, I agree with that. And like, I think that sometimes, like, when we have friends that are white and like we see the things that they say, sometimes we tend to kind of bypass it, or we let them just go on with their day just because we're afraid to step up, or we just don't want to say, because we know that it's gonna become a controversial conversation, and we would just rather save ourselves the trouble. And like, for me personally, like, something similar like this happened just last year in terms of BLM and trying to fight it with someone who's like close to like me and my sister, and it was difficult. But at the end of the day, like, in order to have these like tough conversations, honestly speaking, sometimes you got to step away from that friendship, and you sometimes got to step away from being around them, so that they're able to just take their time to themselves to kind of just like look into things and like see things for themselves, and then be able to have like, I'm not like saying like you should just like leave all your friends, but like, I think that it's an important part, because then they're able to kind of pick and see what they thought was right is now wrong. Like, and it kind of helps them grow, because it's like, a lot of times those people are very dependent on those friends that they're colored, because they love to preach the fact that they're friends with colored people and like, no, I'm not racist, I'm friends with like Black people. No, I'm POC friends. Of course, I'm not racist. But it's like, sometimes you gotta like remove yourself out of the equation in order for them to just realize that like they can't be dependent on you to be able to educate them, or like in like anything in general. So like, that's just my take on like the whole like white savior complex, white fragility kind of thing, like, and how people are just so sensitive sometimes.
And I think when a white person is put in this position, really, I think they should be taking this as correction. This is a growing point. This is where you get to learn, because a lot of this stuff is generational. A lot of this stuff is taught. You were taught this maybe by your parents, by your family, what you saw around, what you saw on TV and social media, right? So this should be a moment where you kind of get to grow. And like, and I usually, like, what I always say is make sure you show up as a student. Like, and I mentioned that, like, even whenever like saying speeches and stuff, I never want to come off like as if I know or have everything figured out, because like I said earlier, I don't know all the facts. My knowledge, despite my experiences, which is true, but in terms of like maybe factual knowledge, like I probably don't have as much, and I'm still learning. And so I try to make it clear, like, we should always be showing up as a student and not really taking offense from everything that is said, because it's a growing point, because you learn, and then now your future kids will learn, and the future generation will see how we treat each other, right? So
yeah, and like, it's not gonna stop unless you break the chain, like, or else it's just gonna continue going for so long. And then this is where like, all of us who are trying to be activists and trying to prevent this from going any further and are trying to be progressive in this, it's just not happening, because it's like, some people are just scared of change, or they just don't want to change because it's too hard for them, so that they just continue to stay in their own ways. And then we give in to the excuse that it's like, you know what, you guys are older generations, it's fine, you guys had a different lifestyle to be living at that point. But that's not necessarily true, because it's like, you can change if you wanted to change, and you can evolve. Like, we're all evolving in so many different ways right now, because technology and like society, we all have to always adapt. But it's like, how you choose to adapt can ultimately change the way we as society look at each other, and that's a really important part, in my opinion.
And also to add to that, I think that we shouldn't depend on other minorities. Like, we shouldn't depend on Black people. We shouldn't depend on Asian people to kind of teach us about their just their experiences on racism, right? We should go out, we should learn about it ourselves. It's our responsibility to do that. It's not their responsibility. So if that's reading a book or watching a documentary or even taking a course, like, that's our responsibility.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed. It's not always our job to do that.
Sorry,
should
Rima, go ahead.
Yeah, in fact, I guess to everything that was said, and again, I don't even mean to seem like I'm picking on Rebecca, but like, because Rebecca is offering a lot of dope insight, and like, what I would say, I'm speaking more so to the concern about, I guess, like being like, you don't want to come off rude or come off this, but in truth, you're not responsible for anybody's feelings or anybody's reaction to what you say, so long as you're doing it respectfully. And I think that a big part of white fragility is that like insecurity and guilt almost of understanding that they are in a place of privilege. And
Yeah.
for and most of race, like most of the conversation regarding race ends up being a burden that falls on the marginalized, I guess, group in the interaction, so to speak. And like for the first time when people bring up, I guess, race related issues within white circles, it now eventually becomes their problem, and it becomes something that they have to endure. However, actually, I won't. I was going to say something, but I don't think I should say that. But I think that it should. It becomes their problem, and with that comes that fragility and that almost like blissful ignorance or naivety, kind of like, oh, I don't know what to say. I'm not this. I'm not that. However, you might not be racist. However, you still operate and still affirm white supremacy. Therefore, you should listen. So
Yeah.
that's my 2 cents. So
Yeah, I think a lot of like Rime said, a lot of guilt stems from not stems from, sorry, a lot of guilt leads to, I guess, opportunities that aren't really transparent. So you see a lot of job opportunities that are being posted to promote and help spread awareness for marginalized communities. You see scholarships being available, even though a lot of them are within our own community and we are helping each other. Some of them are just like, okay, here, we gave you guys this job. Now let's stop talking about it. Don't bring it back into our workplace that we're not diverse, that we're only hiring certain amount of people, right? So even back to my other point, in scholarships, we see here Rebecca said that she takes a lot of advantage of all the scholarships that she gets. But on the flip side to it, maybe Logan, you can answer this. How does that look on maybe from a white male's perspective? Like, do you see those opportunities and you're like, oh, like these, like this is too much now, or is it like it's not enough? We need to have more. We need to have more inclusion, diversity.
It's never enough. It really isn't, because per capita white people don't need the scholarships. We don't. We have the money to go and get an education. If it was the US, it's like no one can afford it, like except the 1%. But in Canada, if you get a part-time job, because also for some reason a lot of white people don't do part-time jobs in universities anymore because it's too stressful. And it's like, what is going on?
Privilege.
That's the thing I realized too. A lot of like youth our age, it's a lot of marginalized youth that have worked during school or during their education. It's not like during the school year, you'll have your summer thing, you'll have your internship here, but during the school year, it's a lot of the diverse people that are working at the
I'll confess
and whatnot.
I'll confess, I've never worked a retail job. My first job was with the NDP. Like, my first job was through my connections. And like the first job that I've actually gotten on my own merit is one in the summer in the public service in FSWEP. But white people, there are some white people who need scholarships, but they're usually low income and they can take advantage of the low income scholarships. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, for instance, I saw recently a scholarship for Italian Canadians in Woodbridge. And I was like, they don't need it. Like, what is going on here? Like, and then you look up the average income for Woodbridge per household and it's like $90,000. And it's like,
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
University tuition at the University of Toronto is about 7,000. So even if the kid pays half and their parents pick up the rest, well, I'm not good at math, but let's say it's like 5,000 the parent pays. So like maybe 3 or 2,000 maybe that the kid has to pay. Like
Hmm.
these things don't make sense. You know, there are always people who are going to need the scholarships, but those people are usually low income. But there's also, you know, for me, going to university was never a question. It was literally, I was like 11 years old, and it was like, you're going to university. It's the only way that you have a future. And I think that one of the other things that should be talked about is needing more marginalized people and oppressed people in the trades, because it's so white. Like scholarships or like apprenticeships that are paid in the trades, because that definitely needs some diversity in it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Honestly, there are people from every single group, whether marginalized or not, that need scholarships. But for me, I could go online, and honestly, I didn't even need to really, but I could go online and apply to like 100 scholarships and probably get some. And it doesn't
Yeah.
make any sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Rime as well. Like you were. I brought up when I introduced you. I brought up MLSE for a reason too, because you work a lot with youth, and you work on like um, developing and helping in such areas as well. So how does one Logan touched on it as well. Like it could be a bit more challenging to have that conversation as a minority, making that connection within, like if someone wants to be within the sport industry, it's going to be hard for them making that connection. So what are some steps that like we could take to potentially have those difficult conversations, right? Even if you're from the ends, even if you don't know much, like what are some of the steps that maybe you do down there to help you, or some things
Yeah.
that you realize along the way?
Yeah. Interestingly enough, I'm actually doing like a workshop on this next week. I can give the information to Rebecca and Zach. Maybe if you guys want to pop out, you guys totally can. And I'm doing it with a professor, or I think he's finishing his PhD at U of T. His name is Jonathan Hood. And pretty much what we
Wait.
kind of talked about.
Is it this?
Oh, wow.
Yeah. We
It's-
had it.
I'm doing the panel for this, but there's another workshop on another day.
Okay.
That when I'm doing it, with Jonathan, he's on there as well. But some of the things that we do at Launchpad and some of the things that Jonathan kind of shared too, which happened to be very similar, was it kind of starts with identifying the needs of a community or needs of the person. Even I think it goes even down to the person, right? And knowing how you can actually properly support that person and offer them and help build that infrastructure so they can be as best as they can, So like, for example, let me try to make it, I guess, let me see if I can bring it to myself. No, I can't. But I guess at the end of the day, it comes down to, again, identifying the needs of these people and offering them what they need to be successful, and whether that be showing them mentors or people who are in their field, and just so they can at least see somebody who looks like them be in that field. That in itself does something. Or offering them help with their university application or their job application, or helping them find the resources so they can leave school with minimal debt. So again, I think it comes down to actually doing it with intention. I didn't hear. I saw somebody in the comments talk about intention when they were talking about posting, but acting with intention is very important. I think, to answer your question, making sure that you are serving that person how they need to be served, I think would be the best way to answer that, Zachary Brown.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And I just want to say, a big part of this, the government can solve, and they don't. For instance, if we look at the anti-racism budget for the province of Ontario, it is not enough to buy a house basically anywhere in the province. Just one. It's like, I think, 200,000 if I remember correctly. That is nothing. That is a drop in the bucket. It's like literally compared to the total Ontario bucket, it's like a half of a hair. Like, it's nothing. For education, how about free tuition? That would stop a lot of the hesitancy. How about free tuition? How about giving people the opportunities that they deserve? How about, having dedicated OSAP grants for minorities in a situation, not just Indigenous people, which should obviously, but other minorities? How about that? But again, we hear none of this because it's either not popular enough or it's not important enough, because unfortunately people, until it comes to a head, don't care, in my experience. Like, even now, when's the last time that I've seen a Black Lives Matter post? It must have been weeks. And it's like, you were the same person calling out and tagging people on Instagram saying you're not posting BLM stuff publicly in a public forum, and now we haven't heard from you in 3 months. Where are you, sweetheart?
Facts. Facts.
I mean, I have my quorum or my qualms per se about that, because it's like, while I understand, like, obviously we were posting about that and it's like it was a trend and now it kind of just like died out in a sense, which it shouldn't have, and like people should continue to post. I just don't think that this is the effective way. I'm sorry. I think that people are just gonna get exhausted of seeing their social media, because I'm not gonna lie to you guys, I got really tired of it. I got so tired of seeing so many different things every single day. There was some new like social problem that was happening, and I don't want to sound negative, but I don't think we can solve all of the social problems we see in the world. Like, it's not going to happen. We can try our best, but it's not going to happen. And like,
definitely not on social media.
Yeah, exactly.
I completely agree. It's more about the hypocrisy. It's like,
yeah. And it's like, you have to like go further than that. Like, you got to be willing to go through lengths and hoops and go to the people who can really do something, which will obviously be the lawmakers and the policy holders. And who are those people? The people who are in office. And it's like, you're not going to reach them by just posting on your Instagram that's like private. Like, it's not going to work. So it's like, to me, I don't see the purpose in doing all of this when all it's going to do is really just desensitize all of us to just seeing this and making it seem like it's so normal. And then also it's just going to give us fatigue from being online. Like, we're already burnt out enough from being online for just everything going on right now. So to top it all off with all the social issues that you're seeing now, it's like adding that to the equation in terms of trying to preach that, it's just so much harder. And it's just so unbearing. So like, for me personally, I just don't see the purpose in trying to call someone out. Like, yeah, they did it 3 months ago, but what we should be doing is following up on, have they contacted anyone? Have they really tried to meet any MPs or MPPs? Have they tried anything related to Parliament? Like, those are what we should be doing, rather than just like pointing the finger, because like pointing the finger isn't going to get us anywhere. It's just going to keep us where we're at, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. It's more what I was trying to do by saying that is it's more about the kind of, these people aren't doing that. And you know what's the reason why? Because for a lot of these people, and I'm sorry to say, but for a lot of these people, reposting something is easy for them and it's quick, right? You just click once, repost. But calling and making your voice heard to your MPP, that takes effort. And unfortunately, the majority of people don't want to make the effort. And then unfortunately they go and cry, oh, this isn't happening. Why is the government not doing anything? Because you've only signed that change.org petition that hasn't been sent anywhere.
Yeah.
The government isn't hearing you, so the government's not doing anything for you, because there's no political incentive for them to do it until there is a political incentive, which you have not created at all. So, like, I get the whole let's not point our fingers at people, but also let's point our fingers at people, because some of these people are just being lazy about it's not even activism. It's tokenism. These people are being lazy about it. And it's like, if you cared that much, if you saw MPP Sol Mamakwa getting told by the premier of this province that he was skipping the line for a vaccine and that he should be ashamed of himself. And you just posted something and thought that that was going to leave it at. Where were you on the premier's phone line? Where were you tweeting him? They weren't anywhere because
not a lot of people have access to that, because we also have to acknowledge that. And I don't mean to play like devil's advocate, because I always have to play that role.
You do.
But I mean, girl, you not having access to a home line, to a phone, like
You
this
do have access to a home line.
everybody's
We're
got a
talking
phone.
about like Justin Trudeau, like premier. He's talking, like Doug Ford. Like not everybody. He won't
Obviously,
pick
you can't just start
everybody.
at the top of the chain. Like
Yeah.
you got the
No,
you
you
go
can.
on OLA.org. You will
Yeah.
find every single
Mhm.
contact of the MP and MPPs. You make a call to them. You call their assistant, and you start
you
talking
can.
there. Yeah.
And you
No,
can
that was
call
the point
even
I
the
was gonna
premier. You can call. You can call the premier's office. You're not going to talk to Doug Ford himself, but you're going to talk to one of his people who actually writes down everything that's been said. And if enough people call, it gets on his desk because they're like, we are being told by 8,000 people on those phones that you need to do something. And what happened when people actually called about that incident? He apologized 2 days later. That didn't happen for Breonna Taylor. It didn't, because people signed that change.org petition, and they didn't call the Kentucky Attorney General. They didn't
I think
call.
that situation is also a little bit different though, because
E-
people did call.
exactly.
Okay. No, that situation. Okay, that situation
But
was
not
different.
enough
People did
did.
call. Celebrities called. People called. Social media was knocking on their and not only social media. Like people were trying to make movements. That's just a whole other systemic issue. That is
Yeah,
within the point I'm trying to make right now
Mhm.
is there's these issues, right? We see these issues. Sometimes knocking on premier's door is not going to work. So taking things into our own hands, right? And I see that, like, for example, like how we have this webinar series and we're having this discussion, right? Instead of just waiting for someone else to have it, we can have this discussion. But we also need to acknowledge the fact that, like Shania said, we kind of have to work your way up. You can't just right away call Doug Ford, right? So I would say just when posting on social media, I would say check your tone, like, because some people are really emphasizing it and then not backing it up without doing anything, or just really reposting what hundreds of other people already repost, right? So I think just starting off there, like making sure that you post things that you actually care about or things that you actually find interesting, and then maybe taking things into your own hands, because there's certain things that you can take into your own hands, right? And then try to reach out to the people who can reach out to Doug Ford and stuff. But when we come to like the Breonna Taylor situation, people were knocking, people were calling, people were working hard, but it was a systemic issue. And so when we have to deal with systemic issues like that, we can't go to the people who are the creators of the systemic issue. Sometimes we have to take things into our own hands. So we have to take that into account as well.
Mhm.
Like realistically, not every teenager is going to call Doug Ford up. Does that mean that they can't do anything else either? Right? Like they can, like all I'm saying is there's alternative
Mhm.
ways as well, because we also want to be realistic. I don't want to, and that came off pessimistic. Like, of course, you can take those lengths, right? But I also want to be realistic for the average teenager, right? Because there's
Yeah.
still things that average teenager can do beyond just reposting that thing on social media.
Yeah, that's the general message that I'm trying to get across, and it can't just be once, because, you know, I've found that when I email MPs about stuff, like my local MP, you don't get a response on the first email, you get a response on the fourth.
Mhm.
I 100% agree. I've had this like problem way too many times, and like my subcommittee right now, we're trying to set up a private members bill to help with like the indigenous people in the water crisis. My goodness, I feel like they're not gonna email us until like next year. It's like nobody's problem right now, and it's like I understand where you're coming from in terms of like a lot like makers' perspective. Like a lot of them tend to either be lazy and not really do anything in their position, or it's like, since it doesn't directly affect them, and I'm going to call it out, like sometimes obviously these issues aren't going to directly affect them because they might be of a different race. It's just they're not going to do anything about it. And it's like, obviously that's when social media comes in, like all of everybody posting around the world, getting a whole reach. Yeah, that's going to make such a difference, because it's like now people are able to start thinking about how they can kind of help, and those people who are involved are obviously lawmakers. So I definitely agree with you, Rebecca, like in terms of trying to figure out how everyone can kind of contribute to this, because it's like obviously not all of us are going to want to do like the lawmaker side. Like we want to figure out other ways that we can go about this to help like everybody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So we are reaching a closing point. I just want to, before we get, to the closing point, I just want to ask if anybody else here has any points, any questions, any things that, they want to get out here on the panel before we get to that point.
I kind of have something, and I guess like this is like a question for everybody here. I was just like wondering, what do you guys think in terms of how society has progressed? Like I always have this question. I always have to I have this discussion. Like, what do we think? Do we really think we're taking steps forward? Are we just doing one step forward, 3 steps like back, or a million back? Like I want to know what other people think, honestly.
Depends what you're talking about. Culturally, I would say, culturally, I would just say read a book. George Grant, Lament for a Nation. Read that if you want to know my thoughts on culture. Cultural, even though it is a bit whitish, it's still very good thing. I would say socially, we've progressed far more than I would ever think that we would have.
But today our webinar is race. So my question is like, what do you guys think in terms of racism? Have we really done obviously we are doing a lot, but have we done enough where have progressed to a different stage? Or do we just really think that we like to think that we are, but we're honestly far back?
Sorry, guys. I think that we're spreading awareness, right? So I do think that we are progressing, and I think that the white community specifically, they're getting woke, and they can they see the problems in the world now that are happening. So I do think that we are progressing.
Just to add on to Lauren's point as well, in terms of progressing, it's hard to say. I will say though that we have changed. Like progressing and change are 2 completely different terms in my book. Just because I think racism today, kind of ironically our title for today, it's more, I would say more kind of subtle, right? And we kind of talked about it. We kind of talked about it. Racism is in the workplace without being in the workplace, right? Like interviewers see names on an application and don't even look at it twice because of your name, right? And I think that portion of racism is not really being talked about a lot. But I do think we are at a weird point in our history where finally, like Lauren said, awareness is being spread, and awareness and guilt are being augmented at the same exact time, right? And Rime touched on the guilt portion as well. That guilt aspect is detrimental, but at the same time, it has to be genuine. It has to be very transparent, because that guilt can lead to like we kind of mentioned, not fake opportunities, but not real opportunities, right? Like limitations within a workplace, even though some minorities would feel like, oh, this is an opportunity for myself, but then they're like, hey, we gave you this, leave us alone, right? So in terms of that aspect as well, right, like we could, like it's very hard to say. I will say we have changed though. In terms of progression, it's still a wait and see, honestly. It's still a wait and see. More change still has to be done, and it has to be consistent. Like change is not something that is done overnight. Like it's very consistent and very persistent. So I think yeah, I guess that's my answer for that one.
Even to add, I guess, to what you said, Zach. I mean, yeah, it's changed. It's adapted because like racism or race and all of these things are all part of society, and so it adapts to the way society is moving, sort of thing, So it's an adaptive idea, and like it's interesting though, because I stand on that hill with Zach when it comes to this question, because like we've never seen like for example, like when Rodney King, Rosa Parks, the one thing that they didn't have was Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok. You see, so with that, the information is there, and people are making it very, very visible. I'll be honest, it isn't, I guess, as consistent. I mean, as consistent as I would hope for personally, because it took George Floyd dying for people to kind of just go rah rah. But Trayvon Martin died, I think, 2012, 2010, something like that. I'm not sure, but so yeah, it's not consistent. But I think the thing is, though, Shania, I want to believe that we're moving in the right direction, just because there are, again, a lot more conversations regarding like equity, diversity, and inclusion, and even like affirmative action being taken kind of a bit more seriously. And also, again, like people are holding people accountable. Trump is an example of that. I think, like, although the people surrounding him may not have kept him accountable, I think that the American people, and likewise the world, kind of held him accountable for his behavior a lot of times. And so, like, we're kind of starting to see a shift where certain things aren't sliding, but same ways, like Zach said, things adapt and things change. So we'll kind of have to wait and see. But I mean, I hope, I guess speaking today, I'll say that I hope it is moving forward. But yeah, we'll see still.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with everything you said, Rime. And just to, add on to, I guess, Shania's question, when I hear, like, do you think things have really changed? Something that comes to my head is power. And it's contradicting, especially as someone who works with inequity, like as the CSLID director of equity. I feel like my response right now is going to be kind of contradicting, but I feel like a reason why I don't feel like there is a lot of change is because the people who are trying to create change are not people who are in power. And I think that's why we struggle to see anything that's tangible. Because, I mean, like you said, we can speak to these people, we can try to email these people, we try to do all these things, but nothing really comes of it. And even this year, after creating, and I feel like there was some progressions from my works, but like after creating a Black Alliance, after creating this and that, but then at the end of the day, that student has to go and deal with that racist teacher within their classroom. That student still has to go and deal with their friend who thinks these stereotypes is a funny comment. So I agree. I definitely think there's change, but I don't know. In my opinion, I feel like I used to be like, well, for our generation, it's going to be like way better. Everything is going to be way better. But then I see someone my age saying controversial things and then not taking correction and then standing on it. And I'm like, wow, like, where are we going to go now? Like these things still exist. So I think racism looks completely different. Like Zach said, it definitely is more invisible, but like it's still there. So I think there's change, but in terms of progression, like in terms of systemically, like it's all still there really. And I think we know that we just have to work a little harder than everybody else to get to certain positions. But when that time comes, when we are in those positions, I see bright things ahead though. For sure. But yeah, I know. Sorry, Zach, I just cut you off. My bad.
Well, I hope that answers your question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it does. It does. It's nice to see what everyone else here thinks, because I've had a few of these conversations, but it's nice when it's like a panel like this and like people are actually very passionate about speaking about it.
Yeah. And so just to quickly recap, before Zach goes ahead and close everything off, right? Because today, like the title of our discussion is Racism Today, What Now? Right? So I think a few things that we can take away from this discussion, like right off the bat, is we got to dead like the social media activism, like the performative activism. Like we have to go just beyond send it to your story. Like you have to go beyond just doing that. Like, and whether that means, you go and you join that committee, or you go and you speak to this person to try to see if they can do this, and that, then that's what it means. But we can't just make a post and then expect for things to change. Another thing we mentioned is acknowledging our privilege, as people of, like, as someone who is not of color, right? Acknowledge that your privilege is there. Acknowledge that even though, and Shania touched on white savior complex, acknowledge that, you are in a place where I guess you can speak up, right? But make sure, which leads me on to my next point, make sure you're speaking up, but you're not speaking over the people, who are trying to get their voices heard. Because at the end of the day, it's not necessarily your voice that, we're trying to focus on right now. We're trying to focus on the people who are oppressed, people who are dealing with the discrimination of society and of our systems, right? So making sure that when you speak, make sure you're not speaking over, certain people. Have those difficult conversations with your family. I know we mentioned in the beginning, they say problematic things. It took, and I don't even mean to put my personal business out there, but it took a while for my mom to get comfortable with me nitpicking at everything that she's saying when it comes to everything, right? Because she's an African lady. So just imagine like all of the things that is coming out. Like it took a while until she actually sat down and took in what I had to say. So of course, be careful, because that Rime just put in the chat, and I have to say it aloud right now. I'm Habesha, I'm not Black. We are Black. We're Black. East Africans are Black. We're Black. Like it's right here, things like that. And then them justifying that Habesha means you're mixed or this, and that. No, we're Black. At the end of the day, that white man sees the same skin tone that Lauren has, that, that Shania has, that Zach has, that Rime has, right? So at the end of the day, like making sure you have those conversations with your parents, have those conversations with your teachers too, with your principals as well. And then, work hard and get into those positions of power so that we can create the change that we want to see.
Allyships, gotta throw that in there.
Yeah. That's
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just want to thank you guys one more time for being on the panel, for sharing your insightful perspectives, even though this was not an easy topic to discuss. But I think this speaks to everyone's leadership in a sense, because we had the courage to speak on something that, it's kind of hard to talk about too. So I just want to thank all you guys for coming. Logan, you gave some insightful knowledge that I just wanted to highlight, especially too, that's not always talked about and not always shared within your community as well. So I just want to thank you for that transparency as well. But that is our time. So we do thank you guys. We're gonna wrap up now.
we'll see you backstage.
We'll see you guys in a bit. So thank you guys. Take care.
Bye, y'all. Alrighty. So that was a pretty cool episode, I have to say. We touched on a lot of controversial stuff.
Yeah, I had to sit back. I had to listen because it's just a lot. It was just a lot. I appreciate Logan. I appreciate Rime, everyone, Lauren as well. Like that. It was just amazing, man.
Yeah,
but it's okay. It's okay. If you guys do want to learn more or have any other concerns, questions, some school supports that you can always refer to is a teacher, CYW, guidance counselor, or vice principal, school social worker, or school psychology staff. I was saying it slow just to emphasize all of the important resources that you can find. So please make use of it. They are there to help.
Yes, and if it is after school hours, there are community supports that are there for you guys. You guys can check up What's Up Walk-In at their website, whatsupwalkin.ca, or you guys can call Mental Health TO with the number that's up there on the screen. And you guys, of course, can call Kids Help Phone Line or go to their website, kidshelphoneline.ca, or text Connect to 686868.
Yes.
All right. So, of course, in every episode, we have to plug our different platforms. If you guys miss any episodes, or if you guys want to rewatch or re-listen to this episode, maybe you guys are on the go, we have our episodes on podcast. You guys can find us on Spotify, and you guys can find us on Google Podcasts. And our episodes are posted there weekly so that you guys
every Friday, so that you guys can get our episodes on the go, as well as our Instagram page. If you guys have any questions, anything that you maybe want us to bring up and stuff, any updates on our webinar, on our show, it will be posted on the Focus, so you guys can
as well, so you guys can focus on that. You guys can follow that account, to get some information.
You
on
make
our
a saying
website.
like that so you guys can focus in or something like that. We need
Yeah.
to make a saying. We need to make a say something like that. And of course, we kind of hinted at it earlier. Rime hinted at it as well. If you guys do want to learn more about diversity inclusion in sport within MLSE Launchpad or opportunities, you guys can contact us. We will give you more information when we get it from Mr. Rime himself. But as you can see, he will be the moderator, the host for that. So you'll see him in kind of that perspective as well.
Yes,
So
yes.
let us know what you guys' interests are, and we could definitely make that connection for you.
Yes. And then next week's episode, our final episode.
Final episode.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe time is passing. But our next episode, we're going to be discussing money versus passion. This one's a big one. This one, I think it's something that's really prominent in a lot of young people's lives. Going into a career, does it make money? What are my parents saying? This, and that. So money versus passion. We're going to be joined with a whole panel full of entrepreneurs and people who kind of have experiences within this, and we'll be discussing the different methods on staying focused, finding your passion, and how to properly set goals, as well as how to deal with those setbacks when they come along, and then how to get back on track when dealing with that. So I'm really excited for next week's episode.
Really excited for
this is something that's prominent in our lives,
Really excited for this. And as well too, if you guys do have any questions in advance that you guys maybe want us to address, just hit us up in our DMs on Instagram, thefocus.foy. But this should be a good one. This should be a great one. It is our last one, so we are gonna go with a bang as well. Like Rebecca said, if you guys want to learn more, listen more, it is available on Spotify and Google Podcast.
Yes.
But share with a friend, because next week, although it won't be the last time you guys are seeing us,
it won't be the
definitely
last time.
It won't be the last time you guys are seeing us, but it will be the last webinar that we will be having on The Focus for now. So on that note, my name is Zach.
I'm Rebecca, and we'll see you guys
next time.
Bye, guys.
Take care.